happening here. I had to think long and hard before I did this video, because I like Anthony YARDE as a fighter. I do respect him a lot, and I like Tunde, and I like the team, and usually they've brought in James Cook as well. So this video is not to offend or to throw shade, but I have some serious concerns about Anthony YARDE, to the point where usually on a live I would open the chat up, but I want to be very concentrated on what I'm saying so that my message is as loud and clear as it can be. I don't know where I begin with this, so I might just bounce around a few places. But I've always suspected, like when they were building YARDE up, and it was great for me, it was great strategically at the time for YARDE to keep away from British opposition, notable British opposition, I say. You know, when they were calling him out, Hosea Burton was a significant, they were calling, there was Hosea Burton, there's Frank Buglioni. I think YARDE would have knocked Buglioni out. There's Callum Johnson. That would have been a dangerous fight, just because of the fact that Johnson can punch and YARDE is there to be hit. So there's serious concerns about, you know, well, not serious concerns. YARDE did not fight the British fighters that were around at the time, and instead they maneuvered his position. He never fought for a British title, maneuvered him into a world title position without actually fighting anybody significant in the British ratings, and nobody significant in the European ratings. And hear me out when I say this, I think it was great strategy in terms of being able to make YARDE the most amount of money he can, getting sponsorship deals and looking fantastic whilst doing so. Now, I'm not critical of YARDE here now and his management team, because, to be honest, if you all listen to me for a second, Bill Caton and Mike Tyson, they admitted himself, they were fighting bum of the week, yeah? And Mike was knocking all these dudes out, yeah? Baddest man on the planet. He was knocking dudes out that nobody heard of. Nobody cared because Mike looked so spectacular knocking all these dudes out, right? He looked spectacular in doing so. That was a great marketing ploy. Other people have tried to do it and failed. But Mike could actually fight. That was the thing. Mike could actually fight. So the marketing tool behind that, that's what made Mike such an iconic figure, because Mike's devastating knockout power and the way he was just running through guys in the division. You know, he had the punching power and had the technical ability, and he was taught by a great trainer in Customata. So you have a great trainer and a good student, right? Great trainer, good student, and mentored well with a marketing ploy or strategy, which was you fight people that have no chance of beating you and you blow them away. That marketing tool was a star, magnificent. Here's what the problem is. Mike had an amateur pedigree, and he obviously would turn over into the pros, and he was trained by Customata. YARDE had 12 amateur bouts, and then he turned pro. And they used a similar strategy with YARDE. But when it came for him to actually fight somebody for a world title shot, he came up short because he didn't have the experience to A, have gone 12 rounds, B, to fought somebody who's going to actually punch him back with significant power. And the corner itself at that stage was, I would say, could have had a better strategy. I remember saying specifically before the fight, right? I said this. I said, if you go back and look at my preview, I said, if YARDE jumps on Kovalev early, he can get Kovalev out of there. But if he sits behind and he allows Kovalev to establish a jab and they don't jump on Kovalev, they will get knocked out because they'll allow Kovalev. You see, when these guys are experienced and you lack experience, you can't play into the experience. Kovalev was good using his jab and put his punches together. That's what Kovalev does. If Yarde had jumped on Kovalev, it would have been a different experience because he rocked him, hurt him early, and probably dropped him because he would have had the energy, and he could have probably gone and finished Kovalev off. But oh no, did they listen? Did they listen? Shit. They ain't listen. Why would they listen to me? What do I know? So they decided to stand behind the jab and allowed Kovalev to get his jab established. Therefore, establishing the jab, allowing Kovalev to set everything off, the right hand, the left hook, the uppercut, whatever he wanted to do. And we saw in the end, Kovalev knocking Anthony Yarde out. Let me ask you a question. Since the Kovalev fight, has Yarde improved? I would say absolutely not. Because Lyndon Arthur produced a jab. It caused Yarde problems in the first fight. And yes, Yarde had some problems outside the ring. He comes back. He beats a Lyndon Arthur that was disgruntled, in my opinion. I'm not taking away from the performance. He still got in there and did the job. But hey ho, what do we have again? Another world title shot fighting nobody to fight for. Listen, I think it's great. It secured Yarde, his family and stuff like that. That is brilliant. For my man, from the ends, I can't but knock him for that. I can't knock him for that. And he's established, secured his family. Brilliant. Kudos to all them things. Hit or not get hit and make as much money as you can out of the sport. It's fantastic. But he's suffering for that now. He's suffering for that now. Now, obviously, technique and technical skills are limited. Because now we're seeing, obviously, the Better Be a fight. He's backed up against the ropes. Better Be was just punching him up. Literally punching him up. You look at that fight again. For all the defensive stuff that Yarde has got, he actually gets hit a lot. Yeah, he gets hit a lot. He gets hit clean, right? So, I'm not sure, based on the fundamentals Yarde has learned, he actually has learned how to defend himself properly. And when he gets put under pressure, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't. In the big fights, like if he could able to defend himself properly instead of taking big shots, first of all, it'd sap less of his energy. Second of all, he probably wouldn't get knocked out. Because he wouldn't allow fighters to get momentum on him, the top fighters. So you haven't actually learned your trade. And then you're going against guys who have taken the time to learn their trade properly. Well balanced, know how to, when they get hurt in a fight, they know how to cover up. They know how to take a breather. They know how to hold. They know when to hold them and how to fold them. I like the song that Anthony Yarde actually came out to against Vilkans. It's actually something that Uncle Bashir used to say to me. You need to know when to hold them and when to fold them. Do you understand? Pick your enemies, pick your fights. And on the subject of picking fights, I will use the word that Yarde's opponents have been handpicked. That guy that fought the last minute replacement was not handpicked. I can assure you he was not handpicked. And Yarde struggled in that fight. Why did that Yarde struggle in that fight? Because that guy had everything that Yarde's technique, it's like kryptonite to Anthony Yarde. Guy's got a good jab, he's got a good right hand, he throws the uppercut through the middle, right? Has Anthony Yarde learnt the lessons from the Better Be a fight, from the Kovalev fight, from the Lyndon Arthur fight? He still can't block a jab. He still can't slip a jab. He's still walking onto right hands and uppercuts. I'm sorry to say this, right? But he's not improving. I think he's struggling at the rate. He cannot fight at a pace, for sustained pace. He fights. Do you know how Yarde fights like? Yarde fights like Kell Brook and Chris Eubank Sr. They cannot fight at a pace. What I mean by they can't fight at a pace, they can't sustain attacks, right? If Yarde's training was different, he'd be able to sustain attacks and get guys out of there. His attacks are like good at European level, but you've just seen against Vilkans that even when he threw those shots, he couldn't put together a cluster of 5-6 shots that would have knocked Vilkans out. That's world class. Yarde isn't world class. And Yarde has, in my opinion, has never been world class. He's had the potential to be world class, but unfortunately, his technical shortcomings are a problem. In that fight, he just had, yes, it's been a layoff. I get that. I understand contractually, but there's some things that even if you have a layoff, where was the double jab? Where was the double jab to set up the shots? Where was the feints? Yeah, why was he able to go to the bodies for sustained attacks? Why is it halfway through the fight his hands are down by the side? To me, that looked like a guy who was trained at the weight, right? So I also believe Yarde is trained at the weight, and I don't understand. If you look at Yarde and the way he trains, you gotta think this guy's super fit. So I actually don't think what Yarde is doing now is doing him any favors, and I think he's actually wasting his time. I have to say, if you can show me how Anthony Yarde has improved from the Kovalev fight to now, how long has he been boxing? Yarde only has one gear, right? He's got one gear, and it just looks like he's got more than one gear when he starts throwing more punches. But he's only got one gear, to be fair, right? And that gear will get him so far. That's why you never saw him fight British fighters, because once he gets beat by a British fighter, his credibility and marketability goes down the drain. So, and had he gone the route of British, Commonwealth, European and world, he would have got found out well before a Kovalev fight and probably got beat on if he was going down that pathway. So again, kudos. The marketing strategy, absolutely first class. But now, as you see in the Vilkans fight, all those shortcomings have been exposed by a guy that nobody's really heard of. Vilkans had a good jab, right hand, up, and there were times Yarde was literally just getting hit with 4 and 5 punches. There was a time I used to think that Yarde would knock BWTM out because he has that right hand, and BWTM is vulnerable to the right hand. Now I think BWTM is actually going to knock Yarde out, because I think first of all Yarde struggles at the weight 1. 2, I think that BWTM works well to the body, and yet BWTM is a puncher. And if Yarde is getting backed up by a guy like Vilkans, and in all intents and purposes getting beat up, because he was getting beat up in there, don't let the commentary fool you. If you go back and look at that fight again, you turn the volume down and you take off all the boxer commentary. They've got to hype Yarde up because that's their fighter on the card. Turn the volume down and watch Vilkans carefully. He was beating Yarde up in there. And if you didn't know Yarde was if I'd say Vilkans was the champion and Yarde was the challenger, you look at that fight again. And that fight is exactly, and it's those fights that Yarde has to be having for him to improve, for him to go back to the gym and say, listen, I couldn't knock Vilkans out, but will his team be able to understand he needs to throw a double jab? He needs to have a rethink about a restructure about his whole approach to boxing. Because I can tell you now, Yarde is not going around much longer. If he keeps fighting like that, he's not going around much longer. You can't keep taking big flush shots like that. You can't. I'm sorry. You cannot. You cannot. Because he'll probably come up against someone who's not like somebody who's on the fringe of world class. Yeah. Who can punch same shots and probably get knocked out. So if they're going to stick with that same strategy they've got, for me, does not work. It's been exposed over and over again. So like, there's another thing that comes up now. So I'm a coach myself, right? And I've been coaching for 25 years in a different sport, but I've still been coaching. And I understand, like, okay, one thing doesn't work, try something else. You had 10 rounds to try something different. Like, okay, you admitted that you dropped the guy, and when you dropped the guy, you kind of switched off. Yeah, that is something that can happen. But the reason why you did that is because you so used to being hand-fed, hand-picked opponents. One of your typical hand-picked opponents would have gone down and not got up. But this opponent that your team picked I'm so sure of it. I'm so sure of it. Because Vilkans had all the attributes of a guy to beat you. Look at the guys that have beaten Anthony YARDE. Look at the guys that have beaten Anthony YARDE. They've all had a good jab. They've all been well schooled. Even Lyndon Arthur is well schooled. Got a good jab. Put Lyndon Arthur outside because YARDE had personal problems. He didn't have personal problems when he fought Beterbiev. He didn't have personal problems when he fought Kovalev. Inexperience, okay. But you can't keep making the same mistakes over and over again and saying inexperience. So, no, Anthony YARDE is not world class. His technical skills are good, but he needs a different look. And I don't think, in my opinion, that he's improved or he's improving. But he's repeating the same things, and to me now, he's regressing, in my opinion. And I'm only saying this out of love. But if AY wants to go on to be a world champion, if it's world titles he's talking about, then he needs to seriously address where he's at, because technically he's not good enough. He doesn't punch frequently enough to be able to get the kind of knockouts he needs at world level. One, I suspect he's got weight problems. He doesn't throw enough jabs. I mean, I don't even know what he's doing with that hand out there. It doesn't create that many opportunities for him at world level. In fact, people go over the top and hit him with the right hand over the top. So it's creating more opportunities for the opposition. You want to do things. There's something they say, right? When something doesn't work, when something no longer serves your purpose, you put it behind you and you move on. Anthony YARDE has got a lot of things that he does serve his purpose, and that, to me, should have been from the Kovalev. And okay, there better be a fight, but you're still sticking and being loyal to something that doesn't work. It doesn't work. And if you want to have an argument and say to me, okay, it does work, well, if you beaten with that style, and don't say Lyndon Arthur, because if we can use Lyndon Arthur to fight, you had personal problems in the rematch. I think Lyndon Arthur had some issues going on without the contract. I remember just saying at the press conference, the contract. That's not your fault, but it is what it is. So we excuse you for the first fight. I'm excusing Lyndon Arthur for the second fight. If anything, I think you should fight Lyndon Arthur again for a third fight. That's what I think. I think you don't want the Boatsy fight. I can tell you now, you don't want the Boatsy fight. And I'm not one of Boatsy's biggest fans. I think he's a guy that, if you had fought the Boatsy route, you probably have already got beat by some of the British. A fight against yourself and Craig Richards would be a good fight. I got a fight against you and that guy Willie Hutchinson would be a good fight. Those are good fights that YARDE should be in, and they're fights he potentially could get beat because of his technical shortcomings. That's why you won't see those fights. This is forced into those fights, and the way he'll get forced into those fights if Turki Al-Sheikh gets involved. There's no way YARDE would be parading the way he's parading as a superstar, British superstar, because he'd be getting exposed. So it's one of two ways for YARDE's team. Either they're going to listen to what I've got to say and kind of take it and think, right, tactically you guys are unaware and you're doing something that needs to change. And the thing about a great coach is their ability to adapt and change and bring things in. So I would look at YARDE's diet. I would look at YARDE's the way he's training his body. So there may be lactic acid that builds up. Guys who are built like that, him, Eubank, Robin Reed, that sort of muscular dudes that I have to train differently. And I don't think the way YARDE's going to move to cruiserweight, or he's going to get a world-class dietitian in to look at his diet and look at the way to throw. He's got to throw punches in bunches, because when he throws punches in bunches, he's a very explosive and but he can't do that. He can't sustain that, and it's because he can't sustain that he will always be British fringe world level. So there's two things. He needs to be able to, you know, a right hand will take you around the corner, a left jab will take you around the world. Not enough left jabs in the yard. And too much sitting on the ropes. Too much sitting on ropes. And when you're sitting on the ropes, it's not like you're secure on the ropes. You're sitting on the ropes and still getting hit on the ropes. So if you look at the Floyd Mayweather fight, when he's getting hit, it's very rarely Mayweather was getting hit on the ropes when you do the shoulder roll. You do the shoulder roll and gets hit. So I'm just asking the question of what you do, why do you do it? Is that the intention? So as a coach, I'm asking, I'll get videotape and I'll sit down and say, okay, what is your intention when you're doing this move? What's your intention when you do that move? What do you think, is that the outcome that you want? You've got sitting the ropes here, you know, you're doing a shoulder roll, you're still getting hit with the right hand. The only time Floyd got hit with a shoulder roll with the right hand, like these two guys, Marcus Maidana, I think, and Oscar De La Hoya. I know Chop Chop Corley caught him, but he was pretty Floyd Mayweather and pretty boy Floyd Mayweather, and Floyd was showing you hands, so he was more aggressive back then. So he adapted his style. So Floyd adapted his style. You all want to talk about Floyd Mayweather, but look at Floyd was in two eras. Era number one, he was pretty boy, who's more of punching power and standing in the pocket and trading. This second version of Floyd, Money Mayweather, was more about being defensively cute, landing shots, hit and not get hit. So that's how Yarde has to evolve. If he's got that style, he's got to evolve. And I would suggest for him to be hit and not get hit. And I tell you something, I'm going to say it now, and this sounds really bad, but a guy who I think would be good for Anthony Yarde would be Adam Booth. And I'll tell you why I say Adam Booth, because of the history of Booth. I believe if Yarde was under Adam Booth, Yarde would be a better fighter. And I'm not knocking Tunde for that. The trainer has their ceiling, and I think Yarde has hit his ceiling here with his trainer, right? Because Booth is a better trainer, but I'm saying for where Yarde is now, Booth has a style where it's like, hey, you look at George Groves, those two guys I like to use, Josh Kelly, put him to one side. Those two guys, you look at their fundamentals, it was feet, good footwork, being able to get into position, throw shots and get out for the most part. And I think that is what Booth could give to Yarde. And they've done it at the high, and Booth's done it at the highest level. He took Hay to the heavyweight championship of the world. He took Hay to the cruiserweight championship of the world. So it's proven what he's done. There's actually proof that what he does works for certain fighters. And I think Yarde would be for me the move that I would, because to me, what is going on with Yarde now does not work. You cannot justify it. Don't tell me, well, he was out for a year, and no, because you have not shown, all that time you're still in the gym. It's not like you've been a year out and you've been sitting on your ass and getting fat. You've been in the gym. So where's the improvements? So I would have thought, you come back, you show something different, first a double jab, shows you've been able to slip the jab now, more head movement. So that's it. Those are my thoughts on Anthony Yarde. And I guarantee you, I swear to God, I speak so much times, watch and see how it manifests. Watch and see what I say today manifest. If they don't listen to what I've said and they go into a top fight like this, because they're not going to match him easy anymore. See that Vilkans fight? That's the writing on the wall right there. In boxing, there's always a warning sign before a guy gets knocked out. That Vilkans fight right there is the warning sign for you, Yarde, and your team to get it together. Otherwise, you're going to come up short before you fight for that world title again. Mark my words. And if your team are arrogant enough to think, we can keep doing it. You were struggling in that fight. You were struggling bad in that fight. Throwing 6 rounds, your hands were down by your side. Not because you were trying to box, because you were absolutely exhausted. And you know why I know that? Because Eubank used to do the same thing as well. Exhausted. Started there and jabbing, and make it look like if you are actually fit and you're basically saying to opponent, yeah, I'm confident because I got my hands on the inside. You're absolutely exhausted. Even listen when you finish talking in the interview. He's talking like he's been punched in his mouth. And for you to supposedly kind of like that your style is a defensive style, you're defensively sound, you're getting punched up in your mouth. You're getting full bloody shots from a guy who nobody knows. If you can justify that, then fine. But this is the same reason why you took the route that you did, or your team took the route you did to fight those world level opponents. Because if you get beat by better beef and you get beat by Kovalev, it looks great. But now, if you go and get yourself, say, beat by someone like a Liam Cameron, or you get yourself beat by even Joshua Boazzi, or you get beat by then a Jose Alberton or Frank Buglioni, all them sponsorship deals, all that stuff you got wouldn't happen. So smart, great, but enough is enough. Either make the changes or say goodbye to potentially a great career. Choice is yours. You can take it or you can let it alone. But trust me, it will manifest, because what you sow is what you reap. And you're reaping it at the moment. And there's more to come. Those are my thoughts on it. I hate to be so harsh, but it's out of love, because I don't like to see people with so much potential, I say the word potential, just wasting the years, not getting younger. And every fight you have, it's another fight where you're struggling to make the weight. So get a world-class dietitian in, and no more home cooking, man. Get a proper dietitian in and really look at your weight, and make some serious changes. Okay, I'm out. Thanks for watching.